Smoke curled around the broken towers of King's Landing like ghostly fingers, clawing at the sky in grief. The once great city lay in ruins, stone scorched black, bodies twisted in agony, mothers frozen mid-scream with ash in their throats. The stench of burning flesh mixed with the metallic bite of blood in the air. It was silent now, but not the kind of peaceful silence. This was the kind of silence that came after something unforgivable. Daenerys stood at the top of the Red Keep, the wind tugging at her silver-blonde hair, her eyes fixed on the ashes below. Her face was calm, too calm. The fire had purged the weak, she told herself. She had broken the wheel, but even she couldn't deny the way Drogon hovered behind her, not like a protector, but like something waiting. He hadn't roared in triumph. He hadn't soared in celebration. Instead, he landed on the charred stones with a thud heavy enough to shake the bones of the dead. His wings folded in slowly, deliberately, and he stared at her. That ancient stare, the kind that made her feel small, even as a queen. Dracarys, she had whispered earlier, and he obeyed without hesitation. Fire had rolled from his jaws, like an unstoppable tide, swallowing soldiers, children, and stone alike. He had listened then, but now as she turned to him, expecting the familiar warmth in his massive eyes, what she saw was different. It wasn't love, it was confusion. No, not confusion. Judgment. Drogon let out a low growl, his massive black body shifting as he leaned closer. His snout touched the blood-stained stones. Beneath him, the broken crown that once belonged to Cersei lay in pieces. His nose brushed it, then snapped back toward Daenerys. He huffed, and a wave of hot air blew back her hair. "What is it?" she asked, stepping closer, hand outstretched like she used to when he was young. "It's over now, my sweet. We've won." The dragon blinked once. Slowly, he moved closer. Daenerys' hand touched the side of his head, and for a moment she smiled. Relief, victory, power. But then Drogon's eyes narrowed. His jaw twitched. He turned slightly, angling his massive head away from her touch. Her smile faded. "What's wrong?" In the distance, she could still hear Jon's voice in her head. "What you did was wrong." Tyrion's silence had screamed, louder than any words. And now even Drogon, her last child, her only true companion, was hesitating. She stepped forward again, but Drogon backed away. "No," she said softly, her voice cracking. "No, you don't get to look at me like that." His growl rose louder this time, vibrating through the stones beneath her feet. Daenerys stumbled back, hurt flashing across her face. "You burned them too. You followed my command." The dragon tilted his head, eyes flicking to the smoking city, then back to her. She tried again. "You are mine. From the day you hatched. I am your mother." Drogon lowered his head, and for a breathless moment, it seemed like he would bow, like the old bond still held. Then his eyes locked onto hers one last time, dark, deep, unreadable. "And," he roared, not the roar of battle, not the roar of celebration. It was the roar of something broken. Daenerys took a step back. Her heart was hammering now. Drogon! But he was already rearing back. His wings lifted slightly. His chest began to glow. She knew that light. She had wielded it like a sword, but she never thought it would face her. Daenerys didn't run. She couldn't. Her feet were rooted to the scorched stones, disbelief weighing down her limbs like chains. Drogon, her Drogon, had his wings spread, wide now, casting a massive flickering shadow that danced across the ruins of the Red Keep. His chest burned with a dull orange pulse, the way it always did before the fire came. But this time it wasn't aimed at armies or tyrants. It was aimed at her. She took a breath, sharp and cold despite the heat around her. "No," she said softly, more to herself than to him. "You wouldn't." But that pulse grew brighter, stronger, and suddenly she remembered what Varys once told her in hushed tones. "Dragons are not slaves, not even to Targaryens. Drogon, listen to me," she shouted now, voice cracking under the weight of panic. "I did what I had, too. They hated me. They would have never accepted me as queen." The dragon's eyes narrowed, and in them she saw something terrifying. Understanding. Not blind rage, not confusion. He understood what she had done, and maybe he had even agreed at first. But not now. Not after seeing the aftermath. The ashes in the mouths of children, the bones still smoking in the streets. The world she claimed she would liberate, silenced forever. She took another step back. Her heel caught on a loose stone, and she stumbled, catching herself on one knee. The sight of her, Daenerys Stormborn, the unburnt, kneeling, was something Drogon had never seen, and he hesitated. The fire in his chest dimmed for a heartbeat. His wings quivered. A low, uncertain growl escaped him. Daenerys saw her chance. "You're my child, my only one left. They all turned on me. Tyrion, Jon, the North. I have you. That's all I've ever had. You." Her voice broke, tears cutting down her soot-streaked face. Drogon blinked slowly. His massive body shifted. Again, the glow of fire pulsed, weaker now, almost gone. She stood, walked toward him. "We can leave this place, fly away, you and me. We don't need thrones, we don't need any of them." For a moment, just a moment, it looked like he was listening. Then a voice echoed from behind her. "Dany. Jon Snow." She turned sharply. Her silver hair whipped around her face, wild and tangled. "Jon?" He stood in the rubble, chest rising and falling, sword unsheathed. His face was pale, his eyes red. "What did you do?" Her face twisted. Part heartbreak, part fury. "I ended it." Jon's eyes flicked to Drogon, then to her. "He knows." Daenerys followed his gaze. Drogon had turned his head toward Jon. The fire came back hotter this time, not because of anger, but because of pain, like something inside him had finally broken. His wings snapped out again, and he gave a guttural, furious cry that cracked the air like a thunderclap. "No!" Daenerys screamed. She ran to Drogon, throwing herself in front of him. "Don't do this! Don't choose him over me!" Jon moved forward, hand on his sword. "Move, Dany. You can't." "Stop this! I'm his mother!" Jon didn't speak, because he knew it didn't matter, and so did Drogon. The dragon reared back, and in a single terrifying burst, he roared again, but this time not at Jon. He roared into the sky, a howl of grief so loud it made the walls tremble. Then, in one horrifying moment, he lunged forward, not to burn her, but to shove her back. She fell hard, skidding across the stones. She looked up just in time to see Drogon's massive claw slam down beside her. Not on her, beside her, warning her, "Stay down." And then he turned, facing Jon. Fire ignited in his throat again. But this time Jon didn't move. He stared straight into those burning eyes, his sword still by his side, accepting whatever came next. Daenerys screamed. But Drogon didn't attack. He stopped. He looked back, at the woman who raised him, and the man who held a knife behind his back. The air held its breath. Even the wind had gone silent. Drogon stood between them now, his massive body tense, head flicking between the two people who had shaped his world. The woman who gave him life, and the man who carried death in his hands. His throat still glowed faintly, embers dancing along his teeth, but he didn't release the fire. Not yet. Daenerys struggled to stand, her limbs scraped and shaking. Her voice was raw as she shouted, "Jon, put the sword down!" But Jon didn't flinch. His eyes were locked on Drogon, and there was no fear in them, only sorrow. "If he burns me," Jon said calmly, "maybe I deserve it." Drogon stepped forward, his shadow stretching over Jon like death's cloak. One slow breath rolled from his nose, making Jon's hair whip in the blast. The dragon's golden eyes stared deep, searching as if trying to understand why this man, this mortal, had earned Daenerys' loyalty, her love, and maybe her madness. Daenerys saw it then, the hesitation, the crack in Drogon's fury, and her voice, twisted by desperation, turned cruel. "He's not like us. He's just another traitor like the rest of them," she cried, pointing a trembling hand at Jon. "You think he loves you, but he will kill you like the others wanted to. Just like they killed your brothers." Jon turned his head slowly to her. "And what did you do today, Dany?" She shook her head violently. "I freed them. You slaughtered them. I gave them a world without chains." Jon stepped closer now, not to her, but to Drogon. He dropped the sword. It clattered onto the stone with a dull ring, echoing like judgment in the stillness. If you want to end it, Jon said softly, looking Drogon straight in the eye, do it now, burn me. But don't become like her. Drogon leaned in, a low rumble deep in his chest. His snout hovered inches from Jon's face for one horrifying second. Daenerys thought he would do it, let the fire loose. Cleanse Jon the way he had cleansed thousands that day. But he didn't. He pulled back and let out the saddest sound Daenerys had ever heard. It was a whimper, a deep, shuddering moan that made her knees buckle. Not the roar of a beast, but the cry of something ancient and grieving. Then he turned to her. She took a step back. Please, she whispered. You're all I have left. Drogon's body shifted. His tail swiped across the ground, knocking debris into the air. His wings lifted slowly, dust swirling around him like ghosts. His gaze locked on her one last time, and she saw it in his eyes. Disappointment. She had expected fury, even hate, but disappointment, it crushed her. Then Drogon did something no one expected. He moved toward the Iron Throne. Well, what was left of it? A jagged heap of melted swords and shattered stone. He stared at it, and then he screamed. The sound tore through the Red Keep like the echo of the gods themselves. Fire burst from his throat, not toward her, not toward Jon, but at the throne. The symbol of everything she'd destroyed the world to claim. Flames engulfed it, melting what little remained. Metal hissed, stone cracked. The Iron Throne, forged by fire and blood, now crumbled into a glowing pool of waste beneath his fury. Daenerys fell to her knees. No. But Drogon wasn't done. He turned to her, lowered his head, and nudged her, gently with his snout. It was not affection, it was goodbye. He spread his wings, his mighty body rising into the air with one heavy, final flap, and he was gone, leaving behind a queen without a throne, a lover without a soul, and a kingdom buried beneath its own ashes. Daenerys stared at the sky long after Drogon vanished into it. The silence he left behind was louder than any roar. It wrapped around her like a cold cloak, heavier than armor, emptier than the throne. Room now reduced to rubble. She didn't cry, not yet. Her face was blank, her mouth open just slightly, like she was still trying to breathe in something that was no longer there. Behind her, Jon finally moved. He didn't speak at first. He walked, forward slowly past the ashes, past the blood, until he stood beside her. He looked at the spot where the Iron Throne had stood, gone burned to nothing by the very creature she'd raised to take it. You didn't have to do this, he said finally, his voice quiet, cracked. You had everything. She looked at him slowly, like he was a stranger. I had nothing, she whispered. That's not true. I had them, Jon. I had a people. I had a purpose. I had you. Her voice started to rise now, bitter. But they didn't want me, not really. They bowed, but they never believed. And now they never will. She stood. So what should I have done? Waited for them to poison me like they did my father? Let them whisper until my name turned to rot in their mouths? You became what they feared. Daenerys stepped toward him, her eyes burning even without fire. I became what was necessary. Jon didn't flinch. He looked exhausted, hollow. You said you'd build a better world, she laughed, a small, broken sound. That was the plan. He stared at her for a long moment, then picked up his sword from the ground, her eyes narrowed. What are you doing? I don't know, he said. I honestly don't know anymore. There was a long pause between them. A pause filled with all the things they never said, and all the things they never could take back. Then Jon said, Drogon didn't burn you. She looked away. He couldn't. Maybe, he said slowly. Or maybe he already knew he'd lost you before I did. That cut deeper than any blade. You're not going to kill me, she said, trying to sound certain. He shook his head. I don't want to. Then what? She snapped. Arrest me. Put me in chains while Sansa and the rest of them tear down everything I built? Jon looked away. I don't know what happens next, but I know this. You're not the ruler we needed. Not anymore. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You loved me. I still do, he said without hesitation, and that was the cruelest part of all. They stood in the silence again, surrounded by the dead. Far below, the survivors of King's Landing were beginning to emerge, covered in dust, coughing through Smoke. People who had no homes, no families, no futures. The cost of Daenerys's vision. She looked down at her hands. Hands that once held newborn dragons. Hands that had freed slaves. Hands that had just burned a city. Her voice was barely audible. What am I now? Jon didn't answer, because maybe there was no answer left, just consequences. Night came without stars. Smoke still hung in the sky, thick and unmoving, as if even the heavens couldn't bear to look down on what had been done. King's Landing was silent except for the distant sobs of survivors and the soft crumble of stone giving way. The Red Keep had become a mausoleum, a tomb of dreams buried in fire. Daenerys sat alone in what remained of the great hall, her once proud armor now smeared with ash, her hair wild, tangled and streaked with soot. She stared at nothing, speaking to no one. Whatever fire had lived inside her, it wasn't burning anymore. Jon stood at the edge of the room, watching her in silence. He hadn't left her side, not because he trusted her, but because no one else would understand what she had become, or maybe because part of him still remembered who she used to be. Tyrion arrived just before dawn. His face was pale, lips pressed tight, eyes sunken. He had walked through the destruction alone, without guards, without words. "You killed them all," he said to Daenerys, not like an accusation, but like a sentence. She didn't answer. Tyrion looked at Jon. "And you let her live." Jon didn't defend himself. Daenerys finally lifted her eyes. "What do you want me to say, that I regret it?" He didn't respond. He just dropped something at her feet. The hand of the queen pin. It clinked softly on the stone. The sound final. "I'm done," he said. He turned and left. He didn't look back. The silence returned, thicker than before. Jon knelt beside Daenerys. "They're going to come for you," she nodded slowly. "I know. You should run." She looked at him then, really looked at him. "And what? Go live in hiding? Let the world call me a monster from the shadows? I didn't do all this. To run, Jon." He swallowed hard. "Then what do you want?" She didn't answer at first. Then, slowly, she reached up and pulled the dragon pendant from around her neck. The last thing left from her past. She pressed it into his hand. "Let them remember me how they want," she said quietly. "But you remember the girl who walked through fire for a better world." Jon's grip tightened around the pendant. Then he stood and stepped away. She didn't stop him. As the sun finally pierced through the clouds, casting a pale light on the ruins, Daenerys stood too, alone. The wind picked up strands of her hair. She walked out into the Red Keep's broken courtyard, where the ashes blew in small, quiet circles. No armies, no throne, no dragons, just her. And as she stood there, head held high, knowing full well what fate was marching toward her, she smiled, not out of joy, not out of victory, but because she had chosen this. Even in ruin it was hers. That night, the Unsullied laid down their spears. Grey Worm never returned. The Dothraki vanished, disappearing like smoke into the hills. The realm did not cheer. The realm did not sing, but it remembered. It remembered the woman who came with fire, and the day the fire turned on her.